I still remember every second of that sticky Houston evening at the county fair, where the lines for barbecue stretched longer than my patience and the shadows of my old life clung to me tighter than the Texas heat. It was homecoming weekend. The whole city felt like it was humming, bands in the park playing Sweet Caroline, flashes of neon from the Ferris wheel, the scent of cotton candy and roasted peanuts, all reminders of a childhood now stamped out by scandal. They say a reputation here is like brisket, slow-cooked, but one bad fire and it's ruined for good. That night was my first public appearance since the day my mother, Linda Wallace, cut me out of her life and our family fortune, right there in front of a judge, half the extended family, and Channel 6 News. I walked into the fairground at 8:15 p.m., trying to ignore the weight of every sidelong glance, every whisper behind a styrofoam plate. My sneakers crunched in the dust. Old classmates eyed my faded jacket, most pretending not to see me. Some didn't bother. Guess he flunked out of the American dream, someone muttered as I passed the lemonade stand. Small-town gossip is a beast. It'll gnaw on your soul long after the headlines fade. My sin? Exposing the truth about our family's finances. A breach of trust, sure, but nothing compared to the kind of misappropriation my relatives had perfected over generations. They took what wasn't theirs. I just told the IRS about it. Now, every conversation flickered between sympathy and low-key dislike. I caught bits and pieces from the circle near the hot dog cart. She said he's unstable. Figures, given the late nights at that startup. 60 million? No way a bastard grandkid pulls that off, honestly. I kept my mouth shut. There was nothing to say that wouldn't dig my hole deeper or make someone text Linda for a fresh bit of ammunition. I found myself wandering past the pie contest booth, where Mrs. Burke, who'd once taught me algebra, offered half a smile, then looked away. I'd lost my place in Houston's pecking order, and everyone made sure I felt it. The most brutal part of being publicly dismissed by your own family isn't the money. It's watching your mom rewrite your whole story in the press, in the bank, even at church telling people you're weak, out of control, easily dismissed. Truth be told, sometimes I believed her. Flashback, that final Wallace board meeting, when my mother's lawyer read the clause. Unfit to inherit, he'd said, voice cold. Headlines popped. Billionaire heir cut off after financial scandal. I hadn't stolen anything, but exposing misappropriation meant becoming the black sheep. Now, as the fair unfolded, I could track my humiliation in real time. I felt every buzz from group texts, every TikTok rumor, each meme tagging me as Houston's fall guy. I bought a funnel cake more out of habit than hunger. The powdered sugar dusted my jeans, and I thought of the other nights, sleeping 4 hours before coding marathons in Austin, working for pennies. The only thing keeping me alive was spite. I hoped someone at that fair remembered who I used to be. The hook for the next part of my life? I hoped it would begin here, where the humiliation peaked. But right then, standing alone on Main Street, I wanted to retreat, to vanish. Instead, I watched as a former friend, Jason, approached with his girlfriend. He nodded, offered a handshake. Still grinding in Austin? Jason asked. Trying, I replied, voice steady. You look better than I figured, he said, a half compliment, half pity. I get that a lot lately. We chatted about the fair, the startup, avoiding family topics. He offered a lifeline. I heard about the sale. You gonna be okay? There it was, the real question. I shrugged it off, but inside I was shaking. I'd made $60 million working 70-hour weeks, but nobody here cared. I was still the kid whose family tossed him like last week's lottery ticket. As the band played, I drifted farther from the crowd, blending into the shadows near the midway games. Can you ever really come back after something like this? I wondered, pacing. My phone buzzed. Text from my lawyer, a reminder about Thanksgiving. Big day ahead, he said. I closed my eyes, breathing in Houston's late autumn air, warm, restless, full of unfinished business. I knew what everyone was waiting for, another meltdown, another reason to dismiss me. But what they didn't know was that I'd found something, a piece of the puzzle, a secret that could flip the Wallace legacy on its head. The humiliation tonight was only setting the stage for my comeback. The fair's lights blurred as I walked toward my car. I looked back once, seeing my mother's face on a campaign flyer. The stakes had never been higher and my time was running out. Before Thanksgiving, I would have to choose: live as the city's outcast or risk it all to reclaim my name. I slammed the car door, feeling the weight of the city pressing against my chest, but I was done playing the victim. I was ready for war, and Houston would remember my name. Austin feels different after dark, not just loud or bright, but alive in a way that Houston never managed. When I first moved here, I wanted the anonymity. Here, nobody knew my last name, and most of my neighbors just called me Wallace like it was any old surname. But those nights, especially in the beginning, were harder than I'd thought. I traded one form of loneliness for another. In my startup days, the office was off East 6th Street, above a bar that never closed before 3 a.m. The place was all glass and steel, blue screens flickering, energy drinks stacked next to a dying potted plant. I'd plug in at 7:00 p.m. and rarely clock out before 3:80 a.m. I became so obsessed with code that sometimes I'd forget what day it was, what season I was living through. Time only mattered in terms of deadlines and release dates. The $60 million dream didn't come from luck. It came from pushing myself past exhaustion night after night while the rest of Texas slept or partied. Most nights, I'd run into coworkers in the break room. Sammy, our UX designer, always asked, "How's the new code holding up?" I'd say, "Barely," half smiling. She didn't know about my family, not at first. Hide your trauma, code your pain. That was my unwritten motto. Sometimes, I caught myself staring too long at the city lights outside, wondering if there was a life where I didn't have to compete with ghosts. But Austin isn't Houston. There's a pulse. On weekends, college kids spill into the streets, laughter bouncing between brick walls, food trucks, live bands, fireflies along the river. I could almost believe there was a new world waiting for me, that I could be someone without the Wallace baggage. The job was good, but the pressure was relentless. Investors called at all hours. "We want quarterly updates." The board emailed me with concerns about your background. I knew what that meant. Stories had reached Austin, twisted over state lines, rumors of mental instability and betrayal in my own family. They'd seen news clips, no doubt. I became a headline in the place I'd hoped to disappear. Still, I kept going. I became obsessed with outworking everyone, proving I belonged at the table. Sometimes the office felt like a chess game. Move, counter-move, never let anyone see you sweat. I started crunching data until the numbers blurred, fighting for every scrap of validation. Wallace will deliver the API on time. I did, but no one really celebrated. In startup culture, yesterday's hero is today's liability. Funnily enough, the most help came from the least likely places. A guy named Luis, the janitor, noticed I was sleeping under my desk. "You trying to break a record or something?" he asked. I laughed, trying to sound casual. "Just trying to stay ahead," I said, but he nodded with real understanding. "They never let up once they've got you figured wrong," he said. For a second, I felt seen. There were wins, too. The app's usage spike during South by Southwest made us look like geniuses. Investors, suddenly eager, booked meetings all night. I handled pitch decks, wrote legalese emails, even coded in hotel lobbies. Every hard-earned milestone was haunted by the fear that my mom, or worse, the rest of my family, was watching, waiting for me to slip. Those rumors traveled fast. I wasn't new to being hated for things I couldn't fix. I developed a habit of ignoring background noise. What mattered was the product, the numbers, the cash flow, the American dream, but always with an asterisk. Some nights, though, the old humiliation crept up on me. Wisps of gossip from Houston would pop up on Reddit, fuel for anyone interested in my downfall. The tech scene had its own quirks. I'd play beer pong with Sammy and the others on Fridays, but always left early. I couldn't risk slipping up, not with the lawyers circling back in Houston, my inbox filling with warnings about the IRS or unexpected bank holds. Every setback felt personal, like my mother was pulling strings from behind the scenes. One stormy Tuesday, I spent an hour in my car outside the office, just staring at a text from my lawyer. Thanksgiving meeting confirmed. Expect complications. Not the pep talk I'd hoped for, The pressure built in layers: family shame, startup stress, public expectations. Sometimes I wondered if I was holding myself together with nothing but stubbornness. That night, I went home and looked at the city skyline from my apartment window. Austin glowed beneath me, full of promise and chaos. I let myself dream, just for a second, that I might actually outrun everything that made Wallace a name worth whispering. But as I turned away from the glass, I noticed an email with a familiar name in the subject line, a banker from Houston, asking about suspicious deposits. My heart raced, hands shaking. This wasn't just a work problem. The past hadn't let go, even here. Before I slept, I promised myself, tomorrow I'd find out what my family was really up to. Truth is, in Austin, no one plays nice after midnight. Rumors in Texas travel faster than a summer thunderstorm, especially when you've got a last name like Wallace. By the time the sun rose over Austin, I was already bracing for impact. The suspicious email from the bank in Houston still haunted me. My mind spun with questions. Who sent word to the bank, and why now, just as our app started gaining real traction? By mid-morning, our office buzzed with energy drinks and chatter about last night's bugs. Beneath all the hustle, I could feel tension building. Subtle but persistent. Someone had put the word out. Stories about my background, about the Wallace money, things I'd tried so hard to leave behind. I caught glimpses of Slack messages that trailed off when I entered, and lunch plans that didn't include me. I fought the urge to confront anyone. I knew better than to play the paranoid outcast. Instead, I put my head down and worked. All I wanted was the code in front of me, in the sense that I could build something that was mine alone. A reputation, a future, untainted by scandals back home. But the rumors weren't content to haunt me in the city. It was as if Houston itself extended its reach into my new life. That afternoon, Sammy tapped my shoulder. "You got a sec, Wallace?" she asked, her voice careful, too careful. I nodded, following her to a side room where the team sometimes crashed after all-nighters. She looked at me, concern etched on her face. "So, somebody posted articles about your family in the team chat. I deleted most of it, but you might want to talk to HR." The unease in her eyes stung more than the actual rumor mill. I swallowed, trying to sound unfazed. "Guess I'm suddenly newsworthy again," I said, forcing a smile. "It's not about that," she said quickly. "It's just, you've worked so hard. You really don't deserve this." Just hearing those words, someone believing I deserved better, knocked the wind out of me. For a second, I thought about telling her everything. The betrayal, the boardroom drama, how my own mother painted me as unstable in public records, but I kept most of it inside. After Sammy left, I checked my messages. My lawyer had forwarded screen grabs of anonymous Reddit posts, emails, just keeping you informed, from investors, and a politely threatening voicemail from my family's old financial advisor. "Austin is still Texas, Ethan. Maybe you should come home and clear things up." My fists clenched. Going home wasn't in the cards until I knew exactly who was sabotaging me. Back at my desk, my mind spun with possibilities. Was someone in my own startup leaking to outsiders? Was Linda behind it? Each time my phone buzzed, my stomach tightened. The only escape was work, so I dove deeper into my coding, ears ringing from the weight of suspicion. Late that night, after everyone left, I scrolled through LinkedIn, searching for clues. Old Houston associates who claimed to wish me well, their comments laced with backhanded encouragement. "Saw you made it big, Ethan. Hope the boardroom ghosts don't pull you back." I forced a laugh, though it made my skin crawl. Did they actually care, or just want ringside seats to my next downfall? I couldn't shake the sense I was being watched. The next day, our CTO asked for a quick meeting. I could tell by the look on his face, the rumors had gone from background noise to front-page drama. "Wallace," he began, "is there anything you need to tell us about your finances?" Careful, emotionally neutral, but the implication burned. "I'm clean," I said, steady as I could. "What happened in Houston stays there. We've played by the rules. If anyone wants to look, I've got nothing to hide." He nodded, but the words felt empty. In startups, faith is fragile, and reputation is traded like stock. I stepped out onto the fire escape to clear my head. Austin's neon signs blinked in the dusk, kids shouting in the bars below, life moving on as if my universe wasn't on the verge of collapsing. I called my lawyer again, desperate for options. "We'll handle it," he promised, "but you should watch your back. Someone's trying to sabotage your future before Thanksgiving." As the sky turned crimson, I realized how deep the sabotage ran, not just in my business, but in my own mind. I vowed, then and there, not to let them win. Houston could gossip all it wanted, but I would fight for my new beginning. But just as I started to relax, Sammy rushed outside. "There's something you've got to see," she said, barely catching her breath. "It looks like one of our investors has ties to someone in your family." I followed her in, adrenaline spiking. Suddenly, this was more than rumors. It was war. The moment Sammy pulled me back into the office, I knew the night wouldn't end quietly. There, glowing on her laptop screen, sat a list of our company's newest investors, and one name my family had whispered for years, always in the context of backdoor deals and silent partnerships. Harris Milner, Houston native, old money banker, and frequent Wallace family guest at suburban Christmas parties. My skin prickled. What was Milner doing here? Funneling cash into an Austin tech startup that seemed, on paper, so detached from my family's reach. I waited for Sammy to ask, but she just pointed at the line. Milner Holdings, $2,500,000 wire transfer, timestamp 10:17 a.m., 3 days ago. I felt my throat tighten. The timeline matched up, almost too perfectly with the day the rumors really exploded. I forced myself to breathe. "This can't be random," I muttered, scrolling through the banking records. There were overlaps, addresses, shared attorneys, names I hadn't seen since those tense Houston Thanksgivings. Every link pointed back to Linda Wallace. Every clue said I was being watched, or worse, played. Sammy's voice cut through the tension. "Should we tell the rest of the team? Or keep quiet until you know for sure?" Her loyalty meant something in a city where most people would have jumped ship at the first sign of drama. I tried to sound confident. "Let it ride for now. I'll talk to the lawyers tomorrow. If this goes public, we're sunk." She nodded, eyes worried. Then the office emptied, and I was alone. Just my laptop, the steady hum of the building's AC, and a sinking sense of déjà vu. Another family plot. Another game where I was supposed to be the pawn. Not this time. I dug deeper, searching old emails, legal forms, every record connecting Milner Holdings to our business. Pieces started falling into place. The investment wired after a flurry of calls with Houston banks, the sudden push from our board to update documentation, the way my mother's legal team seemed to anticipate our decisions. I took notes, ticked off timestamps, cross-referenced contracts. Was this sabotage or something more dangerous? A takeover in disguise. At 1 a.m., I called my lawyer. It took 3 rings before David picked up. "You think the Milner transfer is a setup?" I asked. He sighed, clearly exhausted. "There's a reason Linda cut you out so publicly, Ethan. Now she's playing the long game. If Milner's money exposes your startup to legal trouble, your mother can claim you never truly broke away. It's a trap. Financial, reputational, maybe even criminal." I dropped onto the couch, processing every word. For years, I'd fought against being the Wallace scapegoat. Now, with millions at stake and Thanksgiving on the horizon, I realized just how high the stakes had gotten. David continued, "Don't go public. Find out what Milner wants. Maybe even schedule a meeting. But get evidence. If Linda orchestrated this, it's not just your business on the line. The IRS could audit us for years. The board could pull your shares. You'll need more than rumors." I thanked him, my mind racing. As the city's streetlights flickered, I paced the office, replaying conversations with investors and co-workers, wondering who else was in on the plot. I knew I had to be careful. In Austin and Houston, money moved through shadows. Whistleblowers made enemies. The next day, I set up a call with Milner Holdings. I needed answers, not just for myself, but for everyone counting on this company's future. When I reached the front desk, I recognized the receptionist's voice, a woman from Houston Homecoming, back when my family ruled Main Street. She sounded amused. "Mr. Wallace is calling? Interesting. Mr. Milner will be available tomorrow morning." I barely slept, replaying what little dignity I hadn't lost yet. The city was waking, investors buzzing, and somewhere Linda was probably reading reports predicting my every move. I updated Sammy. "Stay alert," I warned. "We're in much deeper than we thought." That night at a local diner, I confided in Luis, the janitor. He listened, wiping tables and serving coffee. "Whenever people want what you have, Ethan, they'll do whatever it takes to make you miserable. Be smart, but don't lose your soul." His advice stuck with me. The investor trap wasn't just financial. It was personal, ancient, woven into the fabric of Houston pride and Wallace legacy. I promised myself, whatever happened in the morning, I'd get answers. I'd fight for my team and protect what we built. The cliffhanger. What Milner revealed would change everything. If Linda's plot ran as deep as I feared, the battle for my future was just beginning. The morning of my meeting with Harris Milner arrived with that nervous energy you only get before a big game in high school. I hadn't slept much. Austin's downtown haze hung over the city like a secret. As I pulled up to the office, part of me wanted to bail, but the other part, the stubborn Wallace side, forced me through the door. Our conference room was glass-walled and smelled like burnt coffee and old ambition. The screen displayed Milner Holdings' logo, a polished shield that always looked too grand for any honest deal. At 9:02 a.m., the video call launched. Harris appeared, icy blue eyes slicing through the pixels. He looked like a man who'd never worried about a bill in his life. "Mr. Wallace," he said, barely nodding. "I trust you're aware of our recent investment." I replied, cautious. "I am. I also know you've attended a few Wallace parties in Houston. Just trying to understand your intentions." He smiled politely, just the right amount of arrogance. "We appreciate disruptive visionaries. Linda and I discussed the Austin market last month. She speaks highly of your technical skills." My stomach dropped. Confirmation. My mother was in play. I tried to pivot. "Did my mother initiate your interest in our startup?" He paused, feigning surprise. "Business circles overlap, Mr. Wallace, but yes, Linda suggested we look your way. She believes Wallace ingenuity, no matter the fallen angel, has a way of landing on its feet. Besides, $2.5 million is pocket change if the app works out." I pressed for details, growing bolder. "Any outside expectations? Operational control? Are you expecting to take a board seat?" His smile never wavered. "All in time." I scribbled notes as he spoke, time-stamping everything. After the call, I raced to the legal department downtown. The city buzzed. Lawyers pacing between Starbucks and courtrooms, early traffic grumbling on Congress Avenue. At our firm, David handed me a thick file of transfer records, contracts, and redlined emails. We dug through every page. Timestamps didn't lie. Money moved only after a slew of calls from Linda's estate manager, followed by encrypted emails. Attorney names matched my mother's inner circle. One record, an internal memo forwarding my own pitch deck from Austin to Houston, made my blood run cold. Someone inside had leaked it. David explained, "This type of coordination isn't casual, Ethan. It's a systematic move. If we can prove undue influence or hostile takeover strategies, we have a shot, maybe even with the SEC." We mapped connections. Milner's total investment, the overlap with Houston banks, Linda's legal team drafting vague advisory requests. Numbers told their own story. Every wire transfer matched a key moment when public pressure spiked. Reddit rumors, investor cold feet, media drops. My entire timeline was being manipulated, like I was riding rails laid years ago. Tracing emails, I uncovered 2 messages sent to my board anonymously, both pushing for increased investor control. The sender's IP address was traced to a Houston law office owned by Linda's longtime friend. It was undeniable. Direct sabotage. Back at the office, I called an emergency team meeting. Everyone looked wary, their faith shaken by the string of rumors and silent tactics. I told them everything. Every wire, call, memo, and link back to my mother. Luis, mopping the floor in the hallway, said quietly, "That's how they do it in Houston. Take your strength, turn it against you." I appreciated his words more than any legal advice. Sammy was determined. "We have to fight. If your family thinks they can buy us out or ruin us, they're in for a surprise." She volunteered to help me parse everything. Document leaks, patterns in wire transfers, inconsistencies in legalese. I realized, right then, that allies mattered more than numbers. We were in this together. Working through lunch, we scanned spreadsheets and emails for patterns. I found timestamps from bank statements matched directly to moments when news about my unfit reputation circulated online. It was a coordinated smear, timed perfectly to shake trust in me and the company. David called back in late afternoon. Gather everything. If the SEC bites, we might be able to expose Linda's play for what it is: misinformation, manipulation, and excessive ambition, all hiding behind charity fundraisers and country club smiles. I printed out every page, highlighting connections. For the first time, I felt something close to hope, a sense that the evidence might finally swing momentum my way. Hook for what's next. That night, as I organized files, I received a direct message from a local journalist, offering to bring the story into the public eye. The walls Linda built in Houston were starting to tremble. The message from the journalist hit my inbox like a lifeline in a storm. "Ethan, I've been following your story for months. If you're ready to talk, I want to help." The sender was Lydia Kerr, well known in Austin for exposing local corruption. Her pieces often shared across hundreds of Texas news feeds. I hesitated. Trust was hard-earned and easily shattered, but I knew I needed her. We met at a community diner on South Congress, the kind of place where the coffee's burnt and the regulars talk politics between bites of banana pancakes. I arrived early, nerves flickering with every clink from the kitchen, but the atmosphere comforted me. Lydia swept in, notebook in hand, boots streaked with rain. Her first words lacked small talk. "You ready to fight back?" I nodded. She leaned across the table, voice low. "Your family's name rings bells from Houston all the way up to state capitol. I want every detail. Money trail, the lawyers' emails, every denial they've made." Her intensity gave me hope. I handed over copies of the files, screenshots, timestamps, my evolving conspiracy wall in digital form. She listened as I unraveled my side, the investments that reeked of manipulation, the board betrayal, the ongoing sabotage from inside and outside the office. When I described how a relative had anonymously leaked my pitch deck, Lydia shook her head. Classic play: make the victim look unstable, then swoop in with a rescue disguised as charity. Her knowledge went beyond headlines. Lydia had connections at the SEC and local branches of the IRS. Her coverage of city council corruption had led to 3 major resignations. She promised, "A well-written piece can force transparency, or at least make them sweat for it." I saw in her the fighter I needed. The rest of the day blurred into a string of interviews, evidence sharing, flashbacks to Houston scandals during homecoming, and old photos from Wallace family parties. Lydia pressed for specifics. Dates, amounts, emotional toll. I held nothing back, not even the shame. "My family thinks cash can fix everything, but all it's done is leave me in the crosshairs," I told her. She asked about my startup's employees, the silent allies like Sammy and Luis. "People relate to the ones left behind. Your team's struggle is Texas. Hard work, grit, and the American dream just out of reach." She wanted to publish their voices, too. One passage in her draft struck me deep. What happens when the heir fights for what's right, and legacy refuses to let go? Lydia's writing turned my humiliation into potential victory. She checked with me before quoting any emails. Never reckless, always focused on truth and empathy. By late evening, we sat outside, drizzle cooling the autumn air. Lydia listed the risks. They'll push back, try to discredit us both. Are you ready for public scrutiny? That word, scrutiny, felt loaded, but I nodded. I can't lose more than I already have. On my way home, I reviewed her bullet points on my phone. Outlines for investigative pieces, legal strategies for whistleblower protection, local news hooks for retention. We planned a timeline, an exposé dropping before Thanksgiving, timed with community events and featured during the Friday football game for maximum attention. Her suggestion: tie family to finance, humanize the fight, force the narrative to be about justice, not just drama. Back in my apartment, I emailed Sammy and Luis, looping them in. For the first time since Houston cast me out, I felt something close to belonging. Lydia's confidence and my team's loyalty wove together. A fragile alliance, but real. The next morning, Lydia called with updates. Contacted the IRS, set up interviews with 2 SEC officials, sources at Houston banks willing to leak blocked emails. They're sending records tonight. I realized what was coming. A flood. My mother's carefully staged reputation was about to meet a journalist who lived for catharsis. For years, Wallace Silence had protected old secrets. In a week, all bets would be off. Cliffhanger. Thanksgiving was days away. The truth was about to go public, and neither Houston nor Austin would ever forget. The week before Thanksgiving felt electric, as if every movement in Austin traced back to my fight. Days blurred into strategy sessions, legal calls, and shared coffee runs with allies who had no reason to stand by me, except their own belief in second chances. I found comfort where I never expected, piecing together strength through teamwork and grit. Our office buzzed with purpose. Sammy and Luis set up Command Central near the whiteboard, marking banking connections and SEC contacts with colored sticky notes. Lydia anchored herself in a corner, typing furiously, headphones on, sipping the world's strongest diner coffee. I floated between tasks, adrenaline and fear mixing in a way that made sleep feel pointless. Sammy was the quiet spark. She brainstormed interview lists and organized timelines, sketching out coverage on local news and prepping statements that tied our Austin hustle to something bigger, proof that integrity could exist in a startup world. When trolls tried to undermine our momentum, she replied with wit and facts. "Let's make Wallace mean hope, not scandal," she said one morning. Her steady presence pulled us back from panic more than once. Luis, in his own way, became our fixer. He checked the office for bugs, ran interference with security, and handled food when nobody else remembered to eat. He reminded me, late at night, the community's watching how you bounce back, not just how you fall. That simple truth stuck with me, fueling the fire through long hours. One day, I slipped out to my mentor's old diner on Barton Springs Road. Cheap burgers, baseball pennants on the wall, and a radio set to classic country. Roy, my mentor, was a former city attorney turned philosophical fry cook. I needed his counsel. Over grits and coffee I spilled everything. The investor plot, the family sabotage, the looming media hurricane. Roy listened, swirling sugar into his cup. "You know what gets lost in a legacy fight?" he asked. "Your own story. Don't let them hijack your victory. Win clean." His advice cut through noise. I realized preparation wasn't just strategy. It was holding on to my own narrative, making sure the comeback wouldn't be tainted by bitterness. Returning to the office, I rallied the team. We practiced for tough questions. What if the SEC called? What if reporters ambushed us at the park? Lydia and I rehearsed sound bites. We believe in transparent business. The Wallace team is committed to accountability. Second chances build stronger legacies. But anticipation brewed beneath our surface confidence. Emails from Houston grew more intense, cryptic warnings from my mother's legal team, attempts to freeze bank accounts, and board members waffling about media exposure. The phone rang so much it started to feel like background static. Lydia tracked content leaks and analyzed the social media pulse. She'd use hashtags to measure whether support trended local, statewide, or fizzled out. Her draft article promised twists and empathy, her timing perfect. It would drop hours before Thanksgiving dinner, synchronized for maximum audience impact during football halftime when families scrolled their feeds. Our legal team scrambled over tax records, prepping for any audit. Sammy coordinated interviews with Austin's local stations. She knew the producers from volunteering at the county fair. Luis set up a support group for startup founders who'd been burned by big money intimidation. Allies multiplied every day. At night, we worked in pairs, eyes burning in blue screen glow. I shared more with my team than I ever had with family. One evening, Sammy placed her hand on my shoulder. "You earned this fight. We'll remind them. Your comeback's not for sale." Roy texted me an hour later. "People care about heart, not just headlines. Make it count." His words echoed in my chest as Lydia posted teasers to social media. The anticipation was contagious. Thanksgiving was 2 days away. Our prep was almost complete. Every ally ready, every document staged, every voice primed for catharsis. Austin seemed to hold its breath. I was scared, but no longer alone. Cliffhanger. As I left the office that night, I received a call, an invitation to return to Houston for the family's annual dinner. The confrontation I'd feared was now inevitable. Thanksgiving in Houston always meant spectacle at my mother's house, an old Georgian mansion perched above Buffalo Bayou, flooded with politicians, lawyers, and relatives who treated ambition like a holiday dish. I drove up Main Street, hands tight, rehearsing every answer, every defense. Lydia's article was set to go live that evening, and the mood outside buzzed with anticipation and unresolved tension. Inside, the house glowed with borrowed warmth. Giant arrangements of sunflowers crowded the entryway. The smell of pecan pie wafted from the kitchen, and the living room TV blasted commentary on the parade downtown. I was greeted by a cousin who barely disguised her surprise. "You made it," she said, lips pursed. "Would have missed the drama," I replied, feigning confidence. Linda Wallace, my mother, stood at the center wearing her favorite pearl necklace, surrounded by advisors and family friends. Her smile was mechanical, perfected over decades of fundraisers and deflections. She barely acknowledged me, instead tending to the guest list and posing for social photos. I marveled at how tragedy and scandal simply evaporated under her hospitality. The dinner table stretched through the old dining room, silver cutlery laid with military precision. The Wallace clan lined both sides, and an extra seat was conspicuously left for me. No one spoke of the startup, the media, or the rumors. Instead, they offered polite small talk about football scores and local elections. But tension vibrated beneath civility. At 7 p.m., Lydia texted, "It's live, front page, trending. Ready?" I swallowed hard, glancing at my mother as notifications buzzed in my pocket. Conversations slowed, heads dipped toward phones, whispers circled. The first headline flashed, "Mother's Fortune vs. Son's Integrity. The real Houston story unfolds." I saw Linda glance my way, jaw taut. She rallied, rising to tap her glass, the old Wallace signal for attention. "We're grateful for family, through challenge and change. Ethan, you've always had a knack for drama." Her words sliced, but I smiled back. The moment arrived. Channeling Roy's advice, I stood. "I'd like to share something." I cleared my throat, voice steady. "It's true, things have shifted. Sometimes the pursuit of justice means facing what others want hidden. My colleagues and I have built something honest, something proud, and the full story is out there tonight. Regardless of how it's perceived, truth is the only legacy worth having." A hush filled the air as phones buzzed. Lydia's article painted my fight and my family's tactics with relentless clarity. I met my mother's eyes, a silent battle raging. Cousins murmured, a family friend coughed, Linda's lawyer stiffened. My mother simply replied, "Time will tell if Wallace strength can outlast Wallace pride." I let the silence sit before thanking everyone for the chance to repair what matters. As dessert was served, notifications exploded. Friends from Austin texted support. Legal allies signaled go ahead. Even bankers responded to Lydia's allegations with newfound respect. The narrative was shifting, a tide of public reckoning spreading through the Wallace house. That night, as I stepped outside into the humid Houston air, the mansion glimmered behind me. I realized the confrontation wasn't just showdown, it was revolution. I had reclaimed my place, not as a prodigal son, but as a man willing to rewrite the family story. Cliffhanger. The fallout was just beginning. Tomorrow the city would wake to the consequences. The media, the authorities, and one final family reckoning. The morning after Thanksgiving felt colder, muted by the weight of public exposure. Houston was abuzz. News vans parked on Main Street, calls flooding local stations, Wallace lawyers scrambling to contain the story Lydia had unleashed. My phone rang with requests from reporters and cautious congratulations from Austin's business community. Inside the Wallace house, atmosphere had changed. Smiles faded, long-held secrets hung heavy. Linda retreated to her study, flanked by advisors while a parade of relatives debated outcomes in hushed tones. My allies gathered at a breakfast table in the kitchen. Sammy, flown in from Austin, Lydia, phone glued to her ear, Luis, keeping spirits high. We watched as comments poured in. Community leaders praised transparency. Startup competitors reached out for alliances, and families across Texas discussed justice over leftover turkey. The story resonated. Integrity mattered. At 10 a.m., I received a formal notice. Wallace family funds were frozen pending investigation. Evidence Lydia published forced the county courthouse to open a review, and by midday, attorneys for Milner Holdings asked to meet with my legal team to negotiate damage control. The Wallace legacy, once untouchable, now depended on documentation and public trust. Sammy reviewed data leaks, defensive press releases, and fraud accusations with me. Together, we shaped the narrative with a new energy, the voice of a team that survived betrayal, not just one man fighting ghosts. Meanwhile, Luis broadcast positive updates to our Austin network, compiling support from business owners and community leaders. The focus shifted, no longer only family drama, but a real shot at systemic change. I sat down with Linda in her study, confronting her directly. "We can't hide anymore. You taught me that reputation is our real inheritance. Well, I decided to fight for mine. Fair and square." She paused, voice softer than I'd ever heard. "You betrayed me, Ethan, but you sought truth. There's justice in that." For the first time, the Wallace pride became humility. The county courthouse called. Lydia joined me, evidence files in tow. Before the clerk, we reviewed emails, banking records, and every time-stamped transfer. The judges listened. The press captured every glare and subtle smile. By sunset, it felt as if the city held its breath. The case, Wallace versus Wallace, became a saga recounted on talk radio and group chats. For once, I saw Houston rooting for accountability, for a fair outcome. As night fell, I texted Sammy. We did it, not perfect, but honest. The courthouse pillars lit gold in the dusk, symbolic of the hope we'd instigated. Lydia grinned. Now, we show Texas how legacy is meant to change. Cliffhanger. With justice secured, one last decision awaited. How to define my own future, separate from everything Wallace ever meant. Returning to Austin, I faced my team not as a prodigal heir, but as a leader remade by trial. The community welcomed me back with more than applause. Offers for collaboration, invites to speak, even recommendations to join regional boards aimed at ethics in entrepreneurship. The city had listened and chosen hope over scandal. Our startup office buzzed. Sammy and Luis orchestrated the launch of a new initiative, a mentorship program for young entrepreneurs focused on transparency and compassion. Lydia's articles trended statewide, amplifying honest business and restoring faith in second chances. I took part in a city event at Zilker Park, joining families for football and food trucks, where Austin's mayor shook my hand and said, "You showed a lot of grit. We need leaders like you." Humility became my new currency. Each conversation felt clean, unburdened by drama. One evening, I found myself back at the Wallace mansion, not as an exile, but as a guest. Linda was, for once, alone. We walked through the garden, autumn breeze swirling old leaves. She handed me a key. "Regardless of what you choose, you're always part of this story. Make it better than we did." Her words stitched the wound between us with quiet grace. I realized real legacy is built in hard choices, not inherited blindly. The final weeks saw our company's value stabilize. Investors respected our transparency. Community leaders used our journey as a teaching moment. Luis started a monthly dinner for recovering founders. Sammy launched a podcast on integrity, and Lydia helped expose another local scam. My journey came full circle. I was no longer defined by scandal or family feud. I was the architect of a new legacy, shaped by teamwork, courage, and the pursuit of what's right. Austin felt brighter, Houston softer. The future was open, built not on inheritance, but on earned trust. As I watched a Texas sunset from my apartment window, I sent a message to Sammy and Luis. Thanks for believing. Let's help others do the same. Final message. Your legacy isn't how you fall, but how you rise, and who you lift with you. If this story moved you and got you rooting for a real comeback, now it's your turn to be part of this journey. Hit that subscribe button so you never miss another twist like this. Let us know what moment surprised you most in the comments, and show your support with a like if you believe in second chances and new beginnings. Your voice makes these stories matter. Engage with us, and let's build a community where every challenge can become a comeback.